Hey, what up? This is Seth Shark with a little tutorial on how to take some cool screenshots within the game. The first half of this is going to be with just the regular built-in camera. Second half is going to be with the custom tool. This is mostly about framing and a little bit about what looks good and what doesn't look good. This is the Legacy RS in Wales. So this is the built-in camera. By default, you're going to see this kind of mixed view between cockpit view, overhead view, trackside view. There's a lot of different options here, but this isn't your only option. So we're going to go back real quick. All the way back to the beginning. There's a couple different presets if you want to use them. You can also have the music, whatever. I usually broadcast mode on. I don't know what it actually does. I usually turn this off just for photographs. It looks a little better than having that in there. But it's all preference, of course. Co-driver for records and stuff. And timer, make sure you turn that off. What you can do is having this here will kind of make sure it's guaranteed to start at this. You can have it in the in-car view, helicopter view if you like those more, or trackside. I prefer trackside. Usually look a little better, but it's all personal taste. And of course you can cycle through all the views too, so you're not limited to just that only. And a couple of these, like this, is going to be a mixed view, where you'll have some stuff inside but different angles. And there's a lot of built-in camera stuff in-game already, so unless you're doing something kind of unique, there's a lot already on offer. Like this is a pretty cool shot here. And if I find a shot I like, take a photograph. Simple as that. Well, what looks cool? Usually when the car is drifting pretty far and wide, it looks pretty cool. Even shots like this still look cool. I also recommend putting your graphics setting at the highest mode that you can relative to what you have. Obviously, if you're on console, you're a little limited for that, but for PC, I have it maxed out at 1080p. It isn't perfect, but I also recommend if you are maxing it out on PC, be sure to set the anti-aliasing to 8 times. Don't use temporal anti-aliasing. It kind of adds everything a little mushy. And obviously, filters 16 times helps quite a bit with some of the pixelization, and it makes it kind of sharp versus the other way around. So yeah, your frame rate's going to be low in game, but ultimately this is a replay. It doesn't matter what frame rate it runs at. And in terms of finding the right shot, it really comes down to what you think looks good. What, as a general basis, as long as you can kind of see the action and see what's going to happen, it's going to be kind of cool for the most part. So I can see this is a pretty wide shot. Well, I'm not getting the angle I want. I can go into a third-person view here, rotating it with the right... I'm using a Xbox One controller for reference. I'm using the right mouse button, the right thumbstick here, and angling the shot to where I think it's going to look great. So that looks pretty good there. And if I want, I get an even a little bit of a closer view. Actually, a little farther view, sorry. Had that mixed up real quick. So that looks pretty good there. Especially that looks pretty nice. Right, really good rotation over. You can see the angle here relative to the corner is pretty wide, but it's still taking it very, very well. And that is a good shot right there. So that's a normal kind of a drifty kind of angle, but a normal stage view can look a little bit more like that. This is with the lights on, of course. Having your lights on is all definitely relative to what you like. I think it looks a little bit better and adds a little more dynamic kind of to a darker environment, so it looks a little bit prettier, personally. But it's all depending on what you think and what looks good to you. Obviously, if you're driving during the day, you don't really need headlights because you can see just fine outside. But for darker shots inside forests or in darker areas, it's a little bit nicer to have the headlights. It gives a little bit more contrast than just the dark profile of the car. So it's all preference on what you want, but that's what I think looks good for me. But what you like is up to you, obviously. And normally, if you're going down the stage, stuff like this, not even super drifty, but just normal driving. That's a pretty good view. Trackside view usually has a lot of my favorites. This looks pretty good. Yeah, stuff like that's not bad. The more of the background and foreground you have that shows the car moving is usually a little bit better. So not all that much here. Obviously helps to see the car versus just being a cloud of dust and dirt. That's a little wide. Put the corner a little bit there. Something like that's not bad. One there. Just like that. See how the car is in motion but the rest of it isn't? That's really good contrast. There you go. It's pretty good. Slow motion there. Nice little bit of the exhaust going off. Always nice. A little wide here. Boom. Just like that. That's a nice shot. As you can tell, I usually like to take a little more drifty photos than the general driving down the road, because these, while they're definitely an important part of reality, they kind of look boring. You know, it looks like just regular gameplay stuff you'd see normally. The drifty stuff isn't all that common, especially it's also slower than driving normally, so it's not as commonly photographed as much. You'll see sometimes people doing it more than other ones, but it's all relative. But in any case, that's basically how you take screenshots in-game with the normal camera set. You kind of find the angles you think look good. You know, side stuff looks good. Center on stuff isn't bad either. Stuff like that is good. And you kind of take what you want from it, and there you go. Even this kind of view looks good too. Something like that. You can see the screen tearing is pretty apparent. Something like that's pretty good. I think a little bit of motion in it is also beneficial for that. So that's going to be the half of it without the other view here. Let me go ahead and turn on the camera real quick. Bam. Alright. Hop back in game. And we should now see a new window. Oh, did the game crash? Let's see. Here we go. And this is now the view in... So this is now with the camera enabled. What I can do is I can find a good shot. Let's see. I recommend if you're going to be using the camera mod, be sure you're, obviously it's PC only, but make sure you're in the third person chase cam view. What it'll do is if you're in first person view, especially like this, I'll go ahead and show you what Codemasters doesn't want you to see. What it only does is it renders the inside of your car and not the outside of your car. So you end up with this like weird like render thing. This is because you're only supposed to send, normally you'd only see this part of the screen itself. You may catch some of the bumper and the reflections, so that's why they leave the bumper basically rendered. But the rest of the car you're not going to see. You're not going to see the roof or the side panel within your normal seating position, which is why they don't have the head either, because that's where basically the camera sits. So normally it's plopped like that, so you don't need to see that, which is why they don't render it. That's why you're not supposed to see this part, but stick behind the curtains. So yeah, you want to make sure you're in third person view. These will work fine too. The only thing is it's a little bit weird on where they position the camera, so you'll have to kind of adjust it some. Something like that, and you got to go all the way down here. It's going to take you a while, so I don't recommend using this one. Try and start a third person camera. It makes it a little bit closer, a little bit easier to work with. What looks good and what doesn't look good, make sure when you're angling this too, to start with, start on an angle you kind of have preset in mind. So this gravel and this kind of smoke effect is two-dimensional, so you can see that it's on the sides here. It's really important that you set that up beforehand, so when you take and frame the photograph, it's going to look good. I'm using an Xbox One controller once again, so it's a little bit relative to what buttons I have. The D-pad is tilt, left and right is tilt, up and forward and back is FOV, basically zoom. So if I want a really cool photograph, using a little bit of dynamics with a bit of an angle helps pretty well. In terms of lining it up and how to adjust it, what you want to do is take the hood, or you can take either the roof or the actual hood of the car, and consider that your center point. That usually looks pretty good. You can give it a little bit more, but try not to go too crazy with it. You can also go for the tire as your center point. So make sure the tire is centered. Frame it like that, and you should now be good to go. There we go. Something like that. Cool looking photograph. Bam. Get a couple more profiles. Go for one more on the side. Something like that. That's good. And something like that especially looks really, really good. Usually you want to have the profile of the car kind of as the focus. So I don't have it like this as a profile shot because it doesn't, or this as a general photo because it looks kind of weird. It can work on some cars that have the room for that, but this camera is kind of big, so you really can't position it in a neat and fancy kind of way like that. Stuff like that isn't bad either, where you have this as your photograph main and this is kind of your background in essence. This looks pretty good too. Something like, oop, maybe not that much. Hold on. Reframe this a little bit better. Of course, this camera is totally free, so you can go underneath the ground and get the shot you really, really want. So something like that isn't bad. You know what? It's a little too tilted. I don't like that. Doesn't look very good. But, of course, the best thing is, because it's a camera, I can do that, I'm using insert on the keyboard to disable and enable it. Now when you do it, I have it set to disable the in-game movement. There's a button combination you can press, Control Insert to get the menu up. You can change the key bindings to allow you to actually play the game still and move it back and forth. I find it a distraction, so I just have it disabled every time. That way I can basically find the part in the video I want to take a good shot with. That's pretty cool. How about something like that? There we go. Get the dirt kinda close. Something like that looks good. Insert. Free camera mode. And then position it so the gravel lines up nicely. Might go the other way. I think it's going to look a little better. There you go. Something like that. That's pretty. Right? Just right out of a screenshot for the game. As you can tell, it's a little glitchy. It isn't perfect. It's a little bit of a hack job in order to get it to work. Once again, 2D, so keep it relative to where the camera was beforehand. Something like that looks pretty good. If I want to go a little bit more focused, go in like that. Or if I want a little bit more of a wider, kind of a speedy view, you can even stretch the FOV pretty wide. Don't go too wide though. You want to make sure that it's still framed very well. And to frame it well, you just kind of make it so whatever your thing is in is one of the major 3 sections of the screen. So think of that as a third, that's a third, that's a third. Usually a good general principle for where to position your card, make it look pretty at least. Something like that. You can go up above. Not a bad view. Something like that. We can go for the GoPro style on the side. Not bad either. Obviously, you got to be careful of where your camera is, because if you get it in too close, you're going to cut into the bumper. It is a free camera, so you can go totally in the car. It's going to look a little ugly, though, so make sure you position it relatively well. As you can see, we don't have a lot of side room, so it might be a little better to have it back and to the side like that. That looks pretty good. Might go a little bit wider in the field of view. I can see it clipping a little bit, so pull it in. That's not bad. Let's go for the opposite view on this side. Something like that. Bam. I don't mind it tilted. Something like that might look good. Down below, get some of the gravel. Very nice. And one of my favorites I like to do is the front bumper, but twisted. One of my favorites. What it does is it kind of shows the detail. Bit of a unique way, bit of an angle that looks still presentable. It doesn't look crazy. And that. Beautiful. That's good. Now let me go ahead and zoom on over to the inner forest view. So this kind of stuff, it looks kind of normal, right? It's not that unique. But this stuff in here is where we get some really cool reflections and stuff and some different varying light conditions. So I'm going to go to trackside view. I prefer trackside view for just generally seeing the photos early on and what's going to look good or bad. Sometimes I'll use third person view too, because sometimes there's stuff in there that you can kind of find. Yeah, just a bit of understeer. Not really as pretty. Generally you want some oversteer. That's not a bad view there. That's a good amount of angle relative to the road. Let's see if we can get that a little more. No, it wasn't enough. It's all relative to what you like, though, and what you think is good. So just keep that in mind, too. So I'm breaking pretty hard in here. That's a good shot right there. Go ahead and enable the camera view, or the camera mode. Something like that. Maybe a little closer, a little wider. There we go. That way you can see the difference between the front and rear wheels. Exaggerated. Not bad. Let's see. That's a cool view right there where they had the... Yeah, look at that. See, that's cool. I might even just do something like this. Also, just remember that these cars are basically like die-cast cars, so bottom shots down below generally aren't going to look very good. They're not bad, but they're just not going to be as high quality as the exterior. You know, you don't look underneath cars, normally you look above the car, so I wouldn't position it too far below. Something like this isn't going to be bad, though, because you're going to have the nice three-wheel motion, as they might say. The key is how to frame it right, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Might go for something like that. Then zoom out the camera, increase that field of view some. It's not bad. Not liking this shot though. I think maybe something like that might work. Maybe something like that might work. That's kind of cool, but I think that looks a little cooler. There we go. No. Boom. Ooh, that's cool. Get some one wheel motion on here. So all the wheels except for one are actually engaged. So something like this has some unique possibilities. You can get shots like this that look pretty unique. But equally, when you get that side profile view, you get that, you know, speed and the oh god, I'm gonna crash look, which is cool too. So it's framing it. I think this looks pretty unique, especially something like this. Let's see here. Gonna have to compromise some on that one. Something like this, maybe, or rather, something like that might work a little better. Looking up, maybe. Yeah, no angle. Something like that might work. Something where the camera's not going to get run over when it lands, ideally. If you have it, like, right in front of the wheel, it might not look as convincing or natural, at least. But I think something like that looks pretty good. Now, what's interesting is if you go like that, and you have it, and you can, mind you, any flat line can be a good anchor point for rotation. So, like, that's relatively on center. Bam. Good contrast between the trees and that. If we go back to here, yeah, the inverse way, something like that. Something to show the whole picture. It looks pretty good to me. That looks good. So those shots where the lights are on, I'm going to try and get it to re-render that and see if I can get the dirt in there. There we go. So in dustier places like Finland and Greece and stuff, you can have a lot of the bigger dirt clumps. You'll actually get a nice reflection of the rear headlights in that dirt, which makes photos, I think, look a little better, personally. This isn't bad, though. Grab that one there. Now we're on to the finish of the stage. We'll grab one more, just a general photo. Nice. Something like that. Looks pretty good. And boom, there you go. So, bit of a photographing session. Obviously the stage results aren't that great, but I don't care. I'm on controller. And that's basically how I take cool looking photographs. So, hopefully that helps. Catch you guys in the next one.